Hi, my name is Janelle and I work here at Cold Creek. Right now I'm going to talk to you about including herbs as part of a perennial garden. It may not occur to a lot of you that herbs can be an important part of a pollinator garden. Herbs have a long bloom time, and there are herbs that are blooming in the middle of summer when there's not a lot of other things blooming, so they're important to keep feeding the pollinators. I'm just going to mention a few here. But one thing about herbs is I cook a lot with herbs, so I actually have two separate batches of herbs. When you're using them for cooking, you don't want to let them bloom because it changes the flavor. So because I cook a lot and I use a lot of basil and oregano, they never have time to bloom. So I plant plants just for the pollinators, which I then don't use, and I let them bloom all summer. So I'm just going to show you a few that I have. Rosemary, which in South Carolina can get fairly good size. I do use my rosemary even when it's blooming. You can't use enough rosemary off a plant like this to keep it from blooming. Oregano, which I didn't bring out here. Oregano can get fairly good size, so leave plenty of room for it. I mean, you can always keep them pruned back, but I love the smell of oregano and I like to use it in cooking, but it also blooms heavily in all summer, and it's great for the smaller bees and butterflies. Sage is one that's important, and when I asked a beekeeper about what did he need for his bees in the summer, sage was one of the things that he mentioned. It blooms all summer. There are different varieties of this, so you can get a different look with the leaves. I don't cook with sage, but it's a pretty plant. Basil is my favorite. It's my favorite cooking herb, but it's also my favorite for pollinators. I had a basil last summer that got about this tall. It was huge. And I had not only butterflies, I had really large bumblebees on it. And the bumblebees slept on the plant. I went out at dusk one night and it was covered in bumblebees and they were asleep. And I've had other customers come in and tell me about the bumblebees sleeping on their basil. So if you want an herb that's just a lot of fun to watch the pollinators, basil is a good one. Now it's an annual. The rest of them I'm showing you are perennials, but basil is an annual, so it will die back when it gets cold. This is parsley. It's not looking very good right now because this came from my yard and it has been eaten by the caterpillars, and this is how it's grown back. It didn't even make it out of the pot. It is the host plant for the black swallowtail butterfly. And I get caterpillars later in the summer. You'll see little eggs on the leaves, and then pretty soon you'll see very hungry caterpillars eating this down. And I typically have to go and buy more parsley to finish feeding them out. And at some point we'll describe, when the kids were little, we used to put them in an aquarium and we would feed them out and let them form cocoons, and then we would release them as they came out of their cocoons. Mint is a great pollinator plant. It blooms all summer. I don't want to caution you about mint. It's very invasive. So leave it in a pot unless you want it to take over your garden. My first mistake with mint was I put it in a big pot and I buried the pot because I wanted it to look like it wasn't in a pot. Well, it grew wide enough that it set roots out on the outside of the pot and then took over, so I had to dig all of that out. So I just want to caution you about that. Another plant, I don't have one, are chives, which is in the onion family. So it gets a really pretty white onion type bloom on it that also has very tiny flowers on it. So it attracts those really tiny, neat looking pollinators. We have a lot of different herbs. These are some of them. These are the herbs that I plant and the herbs that I use. I just wanted to share those with you. But always include herbs as part of a pollinator garden. Even if you don't have them with your other flowers, have them somewhere in your yard, because the pollinators are going to cover your whole yard. So you can spread these out ornamentally among your beds or other places that you can find. So plant them and enjoy them.